Hello and welcome. My name is Amy Vaughn. I am a doctoral candidate from the University of the Cumberlands. And what I'd like to talk about today is counseling the military child. Whether you anticipate working in the school system or potentially providing services to children in school or outside of the school, hopefully these resources will help you if you end up working with any kind of military children. Military child statistics are as follows. 1.7 million total force military child dependents are in the U.S. That includes active duty, guard, reserve, across all forces. 1 million of those children are active duty child dependents, meaning that their parents are full-time service members. Approximately 2 million military children have experienced a parental deployment since 2001. Nearly 80% of military children attend public schools throughout the United States. So while there often are Department of Defense schools on the posts, most of those children actually attend public schools. Potential issues specific to the military child include, but are not limited to, frequent relocation, deployed parents and military work schedules, parents with service-related mental health issues, and the loss of a parent due to military work. This presentation is going to focus specifically on the frequent relocation and deployed parents. The military child moves 3 times more often than their civilian counterpart. So that ends up being once every 3 to 4 years. And the impact can really be felt for them in the school environment. It can be difficult for them to get records. It can take time. School curriculums between the different schools that they're attending could be different. So they might be repeating something they've already done, or they might be starting in something completely different. The class could be halfway through a block of instruction, so they're having to scramble to catch up. It can be really stressful for them. And the state requirements, like for state testing, might be different. It can also be stressful. The social component of being the new person and having to make new friends and build new social groups can be a source of stress. Difficulty joining extracurricular activities. So they may arrive, halfway through a school year and so are unable to try out for any activities, or the groups may have already been somewhat formed and it might be difficult to incorporate a new person, even if it's a possibility. And lastly, some school staff are just not familiar with the military culture or lifestyle and some of the difficulties that come along with that. But there are some things that we can do to assist. First, you can become informed about the military culture and issues related to being a military child. And then that makes it easier for you to provide staff training about working with the military children. And that can be to teachers, administration, or counselors. Provide advocacy when needed to ensure the students have the opportunities for integration. So if you see that there's a missing component or that the military child is not incorporated or the resources are not available, that you provide some advocacy to ensure that those children have their needs met. And then have a good list of community resources and other resources for the school, the child, and the parents so they can know who to reach out to and what resources are available. Can be very helpful. One other difficulty that the military child can experience relates to deployed parents. So some children experience grief and emotional and or behavioral difficulties when the parents leave. And we see that repeated separation from the parent or parents and parents' exposure to hazards during deployment can increase the stress of the child. And children with deployed parents have higher chances of psychosocial problems than their counterparts and poorer coping skills. Also, a difficulty that can arise is just changes in the household environment. The remaining parent might also be having a difficult time dealing with the deployment, and so may not necessarily be either noticing or able to meet the needs of the child that is struggling. And there's also a shift in the household roles, and that can be stressful for the child as, there was initially 2 parents and now there's only 1, and that one parent is fulfilling all the roles, or maybe the child's fulfilling some roles that the other parent did. So it can be very trying and confusing for them. DeAndrea and Daniels discuss some potential stages of grief that a child might go through. And while their main focus was on elementary, there are a lot of components to this that are effective for all ages. A child might go through numbness, and so, when the parent first deploys, they might be just trying to adjust the idea that the parent is gone. They might go through after that a stage of yearning where they deeply desire the parent to come home, kind of having that experience of the constant wish that the parents could be here. And you might see some behavioral issues starting to happen in the home or the classroom. It's important to recognize that the behavioral issues tend to be age and child specific. So some of the things that you might see, say for around a 3 to 6 year old, so your kindergarten, first grade, is some regressive behaviors. You might see some separation anxiety, worried about the deployed parent, and then worried about the parent at home and safety. They might express some physical discomfort. When you get to ages around 6 to 12, you might see some poor school performance, might be moody, aggressive, depressed, and they might also make some complaints about stomach aches and headaches. And then when you get into the teenage years, you might see behaviors where the teenager is acting out or becomes more withdrawn. And the disorganization and depression is when the child realizes that the parent is just not coming back, at least until the specified time. And so you might see increased disinterest in social and familial or school interests. And then in the reorganizational phase, the child comes to terms with the parent's absence and begins to function more normally. And children typically do bounce back without long-term consequences when they're going through this process. It just can take a little time. But there are some things that we can do to assist them. And first is allow the child to go through the grief experience. It can be difficult to watch and not want to jump in there and fix it, but sometimes we can't. I mean, we can't change the situation. We can't bring the parent back. And so it's best to not try to force them to be okay, or at least force them to put on the front for us. Instead, consider offering support and providing a place where the child can feel heard and validated, or encourage the parent to try to provide that space. Don't punish the behavior. Often the child is not trying to be difficult, and punishment may have little effect. If they're experiencing apathy, then punishment is probably not going to have the intended effect. Again, instead, trying to offer empathy and support is probably going to have a better effect. Now, obviously, if the child's doing anything dangerous or inappropriate, it does have to be addressed. But often the behavior stems from the deeper issue of missing the parent. And then understand the developmental level of the child. So as you're considering what interventions you might utilize with these children, try to utilize interventions or engage in a way that is developmentally appropriate for a child in this circumstance. You can use individual counseling, and if you did, it provides an opportunity for the child to process how he or she is feeling in a safe environment. You can really get a better understanding of where they're in this process and what resources that they might need. Additionally, they can help address any other issues such as academic issues, family relationships, or social concerns that they might have just by nature of being a military child. Family counseling allows opportunities for the family to process hardships together. The counselor can offer some insights and some tips and tools to the parent of how to help them cope with the deployment and how to help the child cope with the deployment. The counselor can also assist in developing a structured routine to assist the child. Often structure and routine can help the child feel some sense of normality in this difficult situation. Group counseling provides quite a few opportunities as well. So the child can get a chance to share with other children in similar experiences. Often when people deploy, it's in groups. So there's probably other children in there with deployed parents. And it will help them teach them to talk about their feelings and use a common language and put words to what the experience is that they're having. It gives them a chance to validate their experience, that they're not the only one and that it's okay to feel the way that they're feeling, to build that social support that they need. And from the counselor's perspective, it's an effective use of time in the school setting. It's rare that a lot of time is available for counselors that work in schools. So group counseling is definitely effective for time. And then ensure stability where you can. Try to give the parents as much support as possible, if possible, and then educate school staff and trying to keep the school routine as consistent as possible. There are a lot of community resources available. Most of them can be found online. I encourage you to keep a list of these resources available for you if you're going to be working with a military child or have the potential to do so, because when somebody is struggling, it's good to have just a go-to quick list of here are some people that you can call or things that you can check or things that you can do to try to really get the ball rolling on whatever your need is. There's Military One Source, and they provide resources to service members about various service member issues. So it can be directly for the service member. And it also includes help with preparing to move and parenting. Department of Defense education area. So for the Department of Defense schools, it provides resources from parenting to parent-teacher conferences, to health and safety, to school counseling resources within the Department of Defense schools. It also provides locations for school liaison professions and professionals. Individuals, these group of people help ensure that local school districts have adequate resources to deal with the military child needs. So this isn't specifically just to the Department of Defense schools, but outside they can do check-ins to make sure that schools have the things that they need. And if they don't, they can try to work their magic and see about getting those needs met. The School Superintendent Association has some resources. They have a military toolkit with resources for school personnel to support military children and counseling services. So there are counseling services. You can get a referral through a primary care provider, and that's typically Department of Defense. If their primary care is outside of, they can still get a referral to counseling. And then also within the school systems, many of the schools that provide or that are near military installations have embedded in them what we call military family life consultants. And so these are civilian contractors specifically placed in the Department of Defense military and community schools to assist military children. And so they are trained and able to provide these resources to these children. So you could either refer to them, or if they were not available, you could ask them for some resources that they might have. Here are some references if you would like to look them over. I thank you for your time and have fun with the rest of the survey.